has a link to our director's webinar in December. And the director's webinar in December, we had breakouts of presenters. There were breakouts from the national meeting that, obviously in person at the national meeting, that were then done virtually in the December meeting. And John and all the presenters figured out how to record those and make those available to you. So John, do you have the link, or should I put the link in the chat?
If you can grab it right there, that'd be great.
That's why I did it, but of course now I'm having a hard time doing it.
I'll find it in the background.
Sorry. Oh, no, I'm technically challenged. So anyways, I just want to make sure that you all know you have access to it. And my question for all of you is, did you take any action as a result of the FOMO breakouts? And that was fear of missing out breakouts. So if you can think all the way back to December, and you were there for the director's webinar, or you watched the recording, or multiple recordings, anything that you did differently as a result of those breakouts? All right, so I'm hoping people are putting things in the chat, and I appreciate those of you who are doing that. Today, we'll do our research minute, as always, and a little connection before content. Question of the month, the fiscal year 2025 SPIDIG competition, just letting you know, hopefully everyone here is aware of that. And then Rebecca Warnock is going to talk about coaching, everything you need to know, but we're afraid to ask. I think she has a different title, but that was mine. All right, so research minute, it's a new version of a quote and question, and then we'll have the question of the month, which is a new feature. So the quote and the question, this comes from a presentation. The New York SPIDIG has an excellent MTSS virtual conference that is annual at this point. And one of their presenters, George Batch, at their 2024 conference, presented a lot of interesting information. I highly recommend watching the recording or looking at his slide deck. And I don't know if Stacey Williams is on, or anyone else from the New York SPIDIG, but we can certainly get you that information if they aren't here to provide it. So what he said was, a review of the literature indicates only two kinds of collaboration likely promote gains in students' learning. So there are two options: collaboration focused on analyzing student data and developing instructional responses, or collaboration focused on curriculum and instructional decision-making, such as integrated lesson planning or lesson design. So I am interested with whether you agree with these statements, and then why or why not. Feel free to use the mic. Feel free to use the chat. Kind of a big question, but you all are experts because you're doing this on a daily basis, this kind of work. And so I'm interested in your thoughts. Leslie.
Hi, Jennifer. Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. Hi, Stacey. Stacey, do you want to go first? Were you going to say something about the MTSS, George Batch?
I was, but Leslie had her hand up. I was gonna answer your question, so I can go after Leslie.
Okay, Leslie. Sorry about that.
Mine's actually another question. I'm curious, and maybe because this is less my field, what areas of collaboration were ruled out?
Interesting. I don't know. We can find out, but good question.
So this is Stacey. I don't know what areas were ruled out, but typically what we find is oftentimes practitioners don't know how to collaborate. And if you've ever been a consultant and you've observed a process, you see that most folks are involved in the admiration of a problem, right? And so I think here you're seeing that if you're being prescriptive and actually like analyzing student data and then making database decisions for that, it'll likely lead to better student outcomes and learning, which is what, Leslie, I'm assuming that's being captured here. In addition, collaboration that's focused on like things that you can operationalize, so we can operationalize instruction, like manipulating instruction, versus I think that lends itself to better student outcomes. So maybe that's what George is attempting to capture here.
And I
And
do think the things I would add, Stacy, was I would say, Leslie, this is a K through 12 perspective on it, and potentially even more like potentially a K through 6 perspective, right? I don't know. I don't know if middle school and high school really been added into that. And so I would be interested in your early childhood perspective too.
Well, I don't know if it's, I guess I can lower my hand.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's an early childhood perspective, and maybe it's captured here because I think sometimes though collaboration with parents is seen as separate than the kind of collaboration we do when we're looking at student data, when we're thinking about instructional responses, when we're thinking about curriculum. So if parents are included in what this collaboration and who the collaborators are, I think that's fantastic. But if not, I do think parent and family collaboration is critical, at least in the early childhood space, for anything we want to see successful in terms of learning or developmental outcomes.
That is a fantastic point and not one I had thought of. Thanks. Thanks for having. And Stacy, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
no.
Okay, great, great. Anyone else? And I haven't looked at the chat yet. Oh, and thanks, Stacy, for providing the MTSS information. Okay, and other people had Leslie's question. That's great. Good. Okay. Well, so I'll add what I know from my reading of the research is I do agree that collaboration, that these two kinds of collaboration have research backing. I agree with that. And I think they're important. And I think we generally with professional learning, these are critical features of effective professional learning from the research we have. But again, I don't know that I would rule out some other kinds if someone was to bring them up, and engaging with families is also evidence-based. So good, great discussion. See, it takes more than one brain, right? All right. Here's the question of the month. And I said this was a new feature. So if anyone has a question about their project, it could be anything about your project that you want to crowdsource data, information, responses, ideas from, just send them to myself or to John, and same thing. And this was a question from one of the SPDIGs. How can a SPDIG provide support so in-school coaches can become leaders or a leader in their school? So how can you develop school coaches so that they become a leader in their school? Kind of like a train the trainer model, coach the coach until they're able to take over. And again, you can use your mic, you can use the chat, whatever you're comfortable with. What's worked for you?
Jennifer, this is Becky, and I would share the two things that I've seen really be impactful is modeling, where they're able to model and watch someone.
Yes.
And then the second thing is practicing. So setting it up into a mock format where a colleague is teaching another colleague how to do something, and then a third person is providing feedback into that, but actually practicing the strategy and then receiving feedback as a group of colleagues.
Excellent. Yeah, behavior. What's that called in behavior land, Leslie? Behavior rehearsal? I think that's right. Yeah, behavior rehearsal.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Yep. So that's,
and Becky, I really appreciate that comment, because in the early childhood space, we tend to think of coaching in a very one-dimensional, like we're verbally talking people through things, which is a component of how you can do effective coaching. But modeling and demonstration are really critical sometimes, particularly when you're trying new skills or asking parents to, or providers to do something differently. We all learn through observation and then reflecting on what we observed, and as well as what we do and the kinds of questions that come from what went well and what didn't and what would you do differently.
Yeah. And again, evidence-based, both those things are evidence-based in the research. And we find this is something that we've seen in coaches that are supported by SPDIG projects since I have been around, which is, now 18 years, that it is the hardest skill for folks to use, the modeling. It's something that when you survey coaches and you say, okay, or you have coaching logs, maybe that is the thing that they do least, even though it has the biggest impact. So it's something that folks need to be really explicit about, that expectation, how you do it, and asking if it's being done, or even better, gold standard, observing if it's being done, right? So it's that whole like Russian doll of like, you need a coach helping here, and then you coach helping, yeah. But before you're able to release that them modeling, they need to have some support with it, is what we found. Does that make sense? Okay, great. I haven't looked to see if there's anything else in the chat.
Jennifer, this is Becky. I was also going to share another idea that I've seen really helpful in the schools is practice profiles. So where you're developing a profile as a collaborative team. So when we were implementing guided reading, we implemented a practice profile. So like, what is the teacher going to be doing when you come into a classroom and guided reading is happening? What are the students doing? What does it look like? But you
Right.
develop that collaboratively and using the research to develop that practice profile. So you're really digging into the research, and then you're making it meaningful to your team by taking that information, synthesizing it, and putting together your own profile for your school.
Yeah. And that, it seems like that's part of making expectations explicit, right? And being able to share them, which leads to something I saw in the chat, is the administrators knowing what is, potentially what's supposed to happen, what to look for, et cetera, what to support and how to support it. Great. Good. Well, this is really helpful. Thank you for everyone who weighed in the chat and the mic. I appreciate you. And we are right about at time, so I'm going to do this the fast way. This SPDIG at time in terms of Rebecca's time. Application deadline for the new SPDIG competition, February 18th. If you are receiving new SPDIG money in fiscal year 2025, you cannot apply. If you are not, you can apply. So you can be in a no-cost extension and still apply. Must be a state educational agency, but a lead agency can certainly be part of the application. The lead applicant has to be the SCA. All right, Fidelity Friday, we had to reschedule. I had a medical procedure that was changed for me. It was going to be about curriculum fidelity, so maybe everyone can be thinking about curriculum fidelity, and I'll talk about it before Jennifer Pierce shares in February about the IMTSS fidelity protocol. Mentors, if you need a mentor, please let me know or let John know. We have the book club, Reading Dare to Lead, if you want to join us. And the newsletter just came out. Please look for the SIG Network email with the newsletter. We got lots of good information. And someone gave me good intel that Brittany Salmons from the Maryland SPDIG just did a nice podcast episode that we're going to share next month. So please do feed me information that I can share. This is the first of the coaching series. I've been wanting to do this for a while because I've heard from numerous projects like coaching is the area that we really are struggling with a bit. We could have more focus on it, or it's just not working out the same way, or we have questions. So enough things have come up. And then I also received notes from the SPDIG national meeting from some of the early morning meetings on the second day. And this was some of what was shared. There were challenges getting coaching data. There were challenges connecting coaching to student achievement, difficulty just tracking what was happening. A disconnect again with student outcomes. Improving coaches' skills and knowledge has been tough. More about how to prove the impact of coaching. Instructional versus systems coaching, figuring all that out. Some coaches are consultants, some are, some get overloaded, etc. Classroom level coaches really necessary, and there aren't enough of them. Looking at how to tier your support system of coaching, building out coaching collaboratives so they can learn from each other, using the district capacity assessment so you can figure out what needs to be happening in coaching, and systems coaching, that you're using a systems coaching institute. Internal versus external coaching benefits and challenges, thinking through those, and teachers that you were going to develop into coaches. There's not a lot of longevity in the teachers that are there. And so finding the right people to develop coaches becomes harder. Luckily, we have Rebecca Hornak here to help us with these and other thorny coaching issues. So Rebecca, what is one thing most people don't realize about you or maybe wouldn't guess?
So my husband and I, we also farm. We are located in Michigan, and we do farm. And what a lot of people don't realize is we collect antique tractors, like the big ones, the real ones. And I am actually the official announcer at our tractor pulling club in mid-Michigan. So
That is great.
most people.
What's your
Yes.
announcer voice like? Can we hear it?
I have a tendency to go a little bit lower. I was trained a long time ago. You
Yes.
should always lower your voice, right? So
Yeah.
I do have a tendency to go lower and say, well, good morning. Welcome to this year's annual club meeting. Like, I just have a tendency to change my voice a little bit. So
Yeah, it sounds a little bit folksy. I love it. Makes me want
Yeah.
to be at that tractor pull.
well, thank you, Jennifer.
Yes.
All right.
Right.
So,
Love
no pressure. I am the kickoff to your coaching series. So hopefully today you enjoy some of the content. There's plenty of engagement built in, but just to, do a quick introduction. I presented for the SPDIG group one at a Fidelity Friday. Long time ago with Sophia. And it's been a while since I've been in front of the group. I do recognize a lot of familiar names. I keep expecting Kim St. Martin's name to pop in there. I know Kim quite well, as we are both in Michigan. But as many of you know, Karen and Sophia left NERN and went to RTI. And so I've had the honor of replacing them as the directors of the SysUp Center. So thank you for having me today.
Thanks for being here.
All right, give me 1 second. All right, so here we go. I promise it won't be death by slides. I'm not that type of presenter. But we do want to get some grounding. And so today we are going to spend some time talking about systemic coaching and the way we set up our systems. I loved, Jennifer, all the information you were sharing leading up to my introduction, because hopefully I'm hitting some of those concerns spot on with today's conversation. We're also going to have some conversations and really examine service delivery plans. So really focusing high level systems, then narrowing down to how we can be detailed as possible. And then I have a tool for you. Not only is it a tool that you might be able to use, but it's in testing mode, which means it's not accessible to the public yet. And so I would love your feedback if we have time. So when we think about implementation and planning and sustainability, a lot of times, we hear things like, you need to look at your data, you need to make decision-making. We have to address sustainability in our implementation plans. We have to really think about strategies and sustainability. But a lot of times, what a lot of folks don't think about is this idea around where coaching fits into that sustainability, right? I'm hearing a lot right now in working with districts where instructional coaching and coaching in general is kind of underneath a microscopic lens, and they're getting cut. And the reason those positions are getting cut is because of financial reasons, number one, and number two, teacher shortage. You've got some of your master teachers as coaches, and you need to put them back into the classroom, right? And so what we're trying to really encourage districts to do is to really pause and think before they make those types of actions and the implications it's going to have on the sustainability of what they're trying to implement. When we talk about coaching at NERN and from the SysUp Center, we do it through an implementation science lens. Some of you may be familiar with our implementation drivers, and coaching falls underneath the competency drivers when we're talking about instructional coaching. So what do we mean by coaching? When we define coaching from NERN's perspective, it's really that personalized, job-embedded responsiveness to educators' needs. And a lot of times our brain automatically go to instruction. We like to think of it as function over form when we're talking about coaching. So it's not necessarily an FTE, right? A lot of our rural small districts can't have or afford or have the staff to do an FTE for instructional coaching. So we do also provide things like peer coaching, mentor-mentee coaching. What does that structure look like? What does that look like? But you will see where we have instructional examples here in regards to maybe it's math coaches, maybe it's a mentor-mentee, maybe it's a general instructional coach who does coaching cycles. There's a lot of different contexts out there when it comes to instructional coaching. Now, we know that based on research, coaching does have an impact. There was an article back in 2018, there was a meta-analysis on an examination of instruction to student outcomes. And we do know that teachers have improved practices when they receive coaching, and student performance goes up with coaching, right? So we know we need it. The argument's there, the research is there. It's just hard in the current climate with everything going on for districts to really commit to coaching. The other type of coaching beyond instructional coaching is this idea of systems coaching. And when we think about systems coaching, it's not just hidden over here in competency, where we're focusing on implementing something specific, such as a literacy program, and you might have a literacy coach providing support. When we talk about systems coaches, we're really focusing on coaching agencies through utilizing and improving their implementation drivers, setting up those data systems, having conversations about their selection process, facilitative administration on making decisions around their data for improvement. There's a leadership coaching, right? Systems coaches kind of exist outside of the instructional coaching bubble. So what are some examples of what we hear? It's the same definition. You're still providing that personalized job-embedded support to educators, individual needs, context is taken into consideration. But the function is a little bit different. The focus is a little bit different. The form is going to be different depending on the context. So we have implementation specialists. Maybe you have support practitioners. Maybe you have MTSS coaches, system coaches, improvement coordinators. I've heard all sorts of different titles in regards to kind of what this role looks like, right? So when we think about coaching, I wanted to just give us a few minutes to kind of ground our thinking and what do we mean by coaching when we say that? Because we have that instructional coaching and then we have systems coaching that interplays with it. So what I want you to do right now is just take a quick pause and do a quick reflection activity for me. I want you to think about, based on the definitions and what I just described to you, what is squaring up for you? What is solidified? What is like, yep, that makes sense to me. We actually do that maybe. What has you circling and pondering and wondering about things? And then what is feeling kind of pointy and uncomfortable for you based on what I described for coaching? So I'm going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes to do some self-reflection. And then I am going to ask for 2 to 3 share outs. Okay, so I'm going to start my timer. And I'm going to say in about 3 minutes, if we could come back. So just one idea for each of those. Okay. What questions might you have before I start calling on people after the reflection? And feel free to unmic or throw it in the chat if you have any questions. All right. I'll give you a few minutes. One more minute, and then I'll be asking for a few volunteers. Okay, finish up your last thoughts. And what I'm looking for is 2 to 3 volunteers. If I could maybe take a volunteer for each prompt I asked, that would be fantastic. So is there anybody who'd like to volunteer what's squaring for them? What's making sense and what are they able to connect with? Feel free to unmic. Take your camera off.
Hi, Rebecca. I'll go ahead. This is Tina from New York. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, hold on. I just realized you guys can't see me. Just see my cute little snowman.
I like your
cuter than-
snowman.
He's cuter than me anyway. So what's squaring off for me? We've had a lot of work with Karen Ward in New York. And so the implementation drivers, the work that you're doing around that, all of that made sense to us. Do you want me to go to like what's circling and triangulating or not?
Sure, if you want, go ahead. Feel free to
Okay,
share.
so for me, in New York, our SPDIG is around MTSSI, and we have coaches in our MTSSI center, which we are very lucky to have Stacy and Leslie working with us. And my question or what's circling around that for me is what other people, excuse me? Oh, that was Lisa. What others are doing around coaching with their educational organizations. What does it look like when you're coaching directly with a district? We have our pilot schools. We also have our partnership schools. We're trying to align that work. What do people use? And I think what's really, as far as triangulating for me, what's really sticking out is what is the effectiveness of coaching? What are they using? What are the walkthrough tools? So that we can not only make sure that our directors are in and observing, but also our coaches are knowing that their work is effective.
Thank you for sharing, right? Like figuring out what model they're using, what does that system look like, those cycles, and then how we measure that, right, is really critical. Because here's what, and I have an example from a district that we'll be sharing, but they were struggling because their board wanted to cut their coaches, and it was because they didn't have a system or data to back up the need, right? The effectiveness and why they had to be there. So we spent a whole year working on that with them. So thank you for lifting that up. Do I have anybody else who would like to share?
I would speak a little bit on some of our systems coaching work and some things. I don't know if it'll quite fit the square, circle, triangle, but we thought if we system coached a district coordinator at the district level, that then they would be able to take over a lot of responsibility and they would become a leader with the building rollout. And we found they weren't really, especially in rural schools, they weren't really ready to give up the state level coaching. They still needed continual like validation, someone to bounce ideas off. So our district coordinators continued where we thought we could kind of like slowly shift down, and we do shift a lot of the responsibility. Like our coaching service delivery plan starts with the state, and then over time it becomes the district coordinator's coaching service delivery plan. But I would say for us, an area of need that we really identified was we needed more administrator coaching. Like that should have been another piece or role. It depended on how much the administrator was involved in the district implementation team or the building implementation team, but we definitely could have done more work with administrators for buy-in and teaming in some sites, or like made them more part of the work, because that's where our rural school capacity, sometimes if the district coordinator wasn't being given the time to do all the work or the time to support it from the administrator, we felt like we probably needed more administrative coaching as like a separate thing in addition to our district coordinator coaching.
Thank you for sharing, Tammy. I recently was just talking with another state partner of ours where they wanted very similar to what you're describing with release of responsibility, right? It's like we go in and we just want to help and we support and we don't think of strategically about like, how do you release and how do you walk with, I was just talking about that process with another state because it's really hard. but because you build relationships, right? It's kind of like SysUp Center. We are still connected with all of our states, even after we're not providing intensive support. It's like we just always have strings attached. So how do we adjust that, right? Thank you for sharing. Stacy asked, how do you really get them to internalize the process and make it their own? One of the strategies, and I can provide some information around this, that we've been really focusing in on, is this idea of co-learning and co-designing and really ensuring that they own the material and the process, right? It's easy. A lot of times it's easier. We do this with our own teams. It's a lot of times for me as a director, it's really easy just to sometimes do the work myself, right? And get it done because it's quick. But finding the time and taking the time to really co-learn and co-design and then trust and release, that all takes a long time, especially as a coach. Definitely. All right. So let's keep going. We are going to actually jump into this idea of a coaching system. There's a lot of words on your screen, but basically what this came from is our district capacity assessment, right? It's a very common tool. A lot of people are familiar with it and use it. And I'll be doing a poll here shortly to see who is using it. But when we are talking about coaching systems, what we're looking for is that at every level of the system, you have a definition for coaching. You have the conditions that warrant coaching, like why do you need it and what needs to be in place. The prerequisite knowledge needed for coaches, responsibilities, selection guidelines, allocation of time. I'm not going to read the rest to you, but you get the idea, right? There's all of these elements that need to be clearly defined, and not only clearly defined, but written down in a process so it's sustainable, long-term, and can be translated, right? Knowledge translation is huge. To put it simply, your coaching system is your big picture, right? At each level of the cascade in which you're working, and I'll show you a picture here, a visualization to help you, but coaches need to be connected within different levels of that cascade to help create some consistency around that coaching. And there needs to be clarity from agency to agency to agency with communication loops, right? And some of that's naturally going on, but because it may not be written down or it may not be clearly articulated, that's when we run sometimes into barriers around who's doing what or responsibilities, or it makes it really hard to step away and relinquish responsibilities because it's not clearly laid out in a system. So when I say the cascade, what I'm referring to is this idea of our teaming cascade. So you have your state team. Some states have regional agencies that they coordinate with and work with. Then we have our district, our building, and our staff and our recipients. Oftentimes students, majority of the time students, it might be a different group depending on what you're implementing. It might be full families and caregivers, for example. When we think about the coaching through the cascade, here's an example of what this could look like. You may have your state team and then your project team or your regional team sits here. They may have literacy coaches. They may have inclusion coaches. They may have systems coaches. Your district might have an MTSS coordinator and a literacy league coach. Your building implementation team might have reading specialists, right? Once again, function over form. Don't think necessarily titles are going to change and contexts are going to change, but what is their responsibility within the coaching system? This example here, you're going to want to articulate how are all of these coaches working together? How is coaching defined within this project? What does it look like? Whose responsibility for what? How are we going to get feedback? How are we supporting? What does that look like? All needs to be really clearly articulated in a plan. In this particular example, part of the plan is to bring all of the coaches together in a coaching cohort for consistent learning, right? So that way they're approaching their coaching in the same manner and everybody's on the same page with what coaching should look like, should sound like, should feel like. So before we get into network discussion prompts around this idea of a system, I saw Kristen Brown is on the call. Kristen, Jennifer told me it was okay that I called on you and picked on you. Is that still true?
It's so true. And now that you were talking about too many slides, I did make some slides. So
Okay. All right. Do you want to share? So Kristen, just to give a little background, we decided to pick on Kristen because Colorado has been a longstanding partner of SysUp Center. They've done some amazing work around MTSS. And so we thought we would give an opportunity for Kristen to share a little bit about their coaching system. So go ahead and share if you want. I think you have access, Kristen,
okay.
if you want to. Do you want to share your slides or do you just want to have a chit chat?
No, I will share my slides, and I'm going to put our coordinator competencies resource document in the chat. And then let me find where I'm so used to Teams. You get used to your platform. Okay. And I'll go fast. If I can get to my slideshow. So really quickly here, and I didn't mean to have all these animations. So we're training, ours is a Colorado multi-tiered systems of support, and we're training in these 5 elements of team-driven shared leadership, database problem solving, and decision-making, family engagement, comprehensive screening and assessment, and layered continuum of supports. And then we've woven in all of this into our training. And here's our overall technical assistance structure. So we have a state leadership team made up of different offices. We have an urban and rural network of districts, not just districts, but higher ed and parent centers. And then national, we have advisors from national and higher education, not just from California, but from all over the United States that give us insight. Here we are the Office of Learning Supports, and we're the state implementation team. We have specialists, and we have 2 actually models, and I'm going to show you 2 different ways that we do this. So we have 3 regional transformational zones. We have regional specialists that train regional coordinators, and I'll show you that. I'll show you that model. And then we have 29 districts. So we have specialists that also train district coordinators. And the idea is that these regional folks at the regional level work hand in hand in alignment with the district coordinators to work with school implementation team leads. And so this is so much, and I'm going to show you a much easier version, but this is the regional piece. So the idea is here is the regional coordinator, and the regional coordinator gets trained just like the district coordinator in all our competencies in our training. And so they're on the same page, but the difference here is that they're coordinating all the districts in the region. So we have a region that has 9 districts, 8 or 9 districts. So they're bringing together all these districts at this level to have a discussion where they're at. Here is where the district coordinators are. And the idea, Tammy, kind of what you were saying is that the district coordinators would go and bring in the school leads and train the school leads. At the district level, this is much easier to understand, but still there's a lot here. Oops. We're training the district coordinators, and out of the gate, we ask that they bring in the school implementation leads so that they're there. And I'm going to talk about the gaps in this because it all looks great until you start working with this, and then you see ways that you can make it better. So this was the idea of our layered continuum of support, that we have our specialists on the bottom that are offering guidance, coaching, resources, best practices. We're creating resources and really training the regional and district coordinators. For the regional coordinators, you'll see some of the same thing, except that they're really there to network and work with the district coordinators and bring a community together. They have done a remarkable job, these regional coordinators. We have some that are working with higher ed, some that are working with what we call our BOCES, which are special ed folks in their regions, and they've brought in Boys and Girls Club, community partners. So that's been great. And the regional coordinators work with the districts, and you'll see what's a little bit different coming out of the districts is the alignment and training with school administrators and leads. And then the school implementation leads is the idea is they're modeling and coaching and training to staff. And then with each of our meetings, and Rebecca, you'll notice this, and this is part of your world as well, is we have pre-meetings between the specialist and the coordinator where they design and prepare the agendas. And then we have meetings with them to get that ready. And the idea is we empower, they work alongside in the co-designing of this. And then we have a post-meeting debrief between the specialist and the coordinator. And then just what can we improve upon? What do we need to do? Because the meetings are happening once a month. So we really need to make sure that they're impactful and valuable. And then let me just stop sharing and just tell you, it was interesting, Rebecca, because one of your questions was, what was the successes and the gaps? So the successes were that we actually got this off the ground. The gaps were that, you know, you're teaching in these our core components, but yet we just hired one of our districts from a rural area that was a coordinator. And I went to her and said, you know, what would you identify as a gap? And I've heard this from our staff as well. And she said, you know, great that we're learning about these core components, but what's missing is we really need to learn more about coaching and training. How do we coach? How do we train? And I hear her loud and clear because, you know, we're coaching in these areas, but not overall. How do you facilitate? And it takes a lot to learn how to do that. How do you coach? How do you train? So love some input from you on that and other folks on the call of how we do that. And then the other thing that we realized, and Tammy, maybe this is what you were saying, is your dream is to drill down to the school level. But, and I actually flipped that with the state team on the bottom, but we realized that in the next iteration, we'll probably flip some things. And we're doing a pilot of school level training because we feel like we did not drill down to the school level like we wanted to. So we're now in this pilot with 10 of our districts to say, just to see where they're at, to train them and get some input on our resources and the way in our delivery system. So Rebecca, those are our gaps, and would love to hear some of your input that you've gotten from other states on that.
Okay. So one of the things we're hearing, Kristen, especially when it comes to things like MTSS implementation, is that it's really hard to get into that building classroom level without a defined program or practice that correlates to the MTSS system. Does that make sense? That seems to be one of the biggest things that we're learning around the implementation of that MTSS system as a large framework and getting into the classroom and that building level a little bit deeper, just real quick off the top of my head. And then we can talk later.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Kristen around how they have their system set up, the gaps, the successes? Okay. Well, now we kind of want to hear from you. I'm going to put a Menti into the chat for you. And what we're going to do is I just want to collect some data from you because that's what we love to do where I work. So let me share my screen real quick and we'll get in and give you a chance to kind of really think about this. So the first thing I'm pondering is who is receiving coaching within your grant? Are you coaching all the way down into the classroom level? Are they teachers? Are they administrators? Are they district staff? Are they other TA providers? Who is receiving coaching within your grant? So I'll give you a few minutes. This is an open-ended response. Feel free to kind of just put some general brain dumping ideas in there. Coordinators, MTSS coordinators are always a big one. Teams, I like to see that. Teachers, administrators, all the people, right? Okay. As we're continuing to kind of build on this and add who are thinking, you're going to see a lot of commonalities, right? Within our SPDIG work and within the work that we do within our grants, we are often tasked with coaching from the top all the way bottom to the bottom of the cascade, right? And so when you're thinking about who is receiving those and the work that you're doing, I'm just going to push that within the development of a coaching system, you can really hone in on that, on the skills that need to be taught, the gradual release plan, and whether or not it's effective, right? Okay. Thank you. Now I'm going to skip that question real quick, just for sake of time. Who is providing the coaching? I'm curious about this. Are you providing direct coaching all the way into the classroom? Are you working with regional agencies and regional agencies are providing it to the district and the district's providing it to the classroom? Because what we're grappling with and what I'm hearing from you all is this idea of some of us are going straight into the buildings. Some of us are going into the classroom or into the district level. Some of us may be working with regional agencies. So who are the individuals providing the function of coaching within your grant? Okay. There's some regional agencies we're working with, SPDIG specialists, state contracted folks, the trained cadre of coaches who are assigned, state employees. Okay, so we have a pretty good mix coming in of who is actually providing that coaching. And so when you have, based on these two slides, when you have that amount of coaching going on, variety of coaching going on, not only to who is receiving it, but who is also providing it. If you don't have a clearly articulated, written down system, it can be very challenging to make improvements, to think about roles and responsibility, who's doing what, to avoid duplication of effort. Okay. What do you think the strengths are of your system? What's going really well for you?
I'll help a friend out. And maybe other people will join. I think it is, you learn as you go, and we're still in that learning phase. So I think for us, what's working for us is a regional model.
Yeah.
And it took us a minute to get it together, and really to establish that that regional coordinator is 100% equal with the district coordinator, 100% equal with the school implementation team.
Yeah.
But it takes time, and I think you just have to be flexible, that it depends on building relationships and who's coming and going and transitions and all of that.
So some things going well, things like training, that continued learning, the support, district commitment. I am so glad to see those two words up on the screen right now. That makes me so, so happy. Motivated rural schools. That's another one I'm going to pull out and celebrate, right? Online learning modules. I'd love to know more about how that's going for the individual who provided that. We have a couple of states playing around with online learning modules and trying to disseminate training to larger crowds at self-paced times. All right. Okay. Well, thank you. We're going to shift over and start talking a little bit more into the weeds. Okay. So I'm going to switch screens here real quick and talk a little bit about this idea of, once you have a coaching system and you have some of those elements kind of clearly articulated, then you can start to hone in on this idea of a coaching service delivery plan. And some of you, Tammy, I heard you say you guys are using them, right? And it's this idea of providing very explicit plans per coach, so they know who they're coaching, why they're coaching, what they're coaching, the frequency of the coaching, the skills, the coaching cycle process that they're using, or the model that they're using, the effectiveness measures that they are using. All of that is built into these service delivery plans. And so just to kind of give you a picture of what this looks like, excuse me, is you go from your coaching system and then you develop service plans. And those service plans are co-created with those whom you are providing the service to, right? So if your state agency is providing support directly to the building, that state coach co-creates that with the building. If your regional agency is coaching the district, these service plans are co-created with the regional agency and the district at the table. So that way everybody is on the same page. So going back to this model, each one of these coaches, the literacy coaches, the inclusion coaches, the system coaches, would co-create a coaching plan with the district team, right? The MTSS coordinators and the literacy coaches, they would have service delivery plans in place with their district or with their building that they're supporting. So that way everybody has a clear understanding of what's occurring. So this kind of gets back to the how you coach, right? We have the system of why we coach and measuring the effectiveness and the communication process, but then you have to look at how you're coaching and making sure that is consistent, but also takes into consideration the contextualized needs. I am looking at time. Jennifer, what are your thoughts? Do we have time for the video, or do we want to get into the template?
My thought on that is, we get into the template, and then if we have time at the end, we do the video, because we can
Reverse
just
them.
give it to folks and they can do it on their own afterward if need be.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So I do want to give a little bit of a shout out. You need to watch this video. This will make our template make so much more sense. But we have been working with Freeland Community School Districts. They were part of CSEP's second iteration when they joined the Michigan crew. they've been around for a long time, and this is my team. I'm just so, so proud of all of the work that they have done. And so I do want to celebrate them. But what we want to do is we want you to give an opportunity to take a look at our template and talk in small groups. So I went ahead and put the template in here. It is view only format for you. If you'd like, you can make a copy and it will be sent out. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, the other screen. And kind of go over what's in here for you. And then we'll put you in small groups to have some conversations. So this is a spreadsheet where you can actually articulate what you want in your system. And so, excuse me, the first tab, you have your coaching system. You'll see all the elements I just described. From the coaching system, where you can identify what exactly it is, what's the status, what's the progress, and what's in place. There's a tab for defining coaching within your system. If you have a theory of action, I think Becky was the one who was discussing practice profiles. I have some sample coaching practice profiles that you can build in here. I'm going to cough again. I apologize. Getting over the crud. Coaching system details. So then the next element is your actual details. This is set up for a district, a large district who might have literacy, mathematics, science, social studies coaching. But what you'll see within the coaching system is the selection process for hiring them, the accountability process, the communication, and the logistics that are needed. Then you'll see an actual template for a coaching service delivery plan that has all of the elements that I've been describing. So inside, you'll see where they can download they can upload links. They can provide specific elements to the actual service. And what Freeland did, for example, is after they defined their coaching system, each of their coaches made a copy of this within the same document and developed their coaching service plan with those with whom they were responsible for coaching. And then the final tab, which we didn't really get to today, was honing down on those measurements and methods for coaching effectiveness. How do you actually measure that it's effective so you can provide that information and that impact to your stakeholders, to show that, the money is worth it, the FTE is worth it, the process is worth it. So what we thought we would do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but put you all in some small groups just to have some conversations around this template. Some prompts for you to think about as you're looking at the different tabs. You may want to only hone in on one tab and have a conversation just for sake of time. But what we really want you to do is discuss what would the benefits be of sitting down and completing this not only as a team, but maybe with the agency, the district, the regional agency that you support, right? So what are the benefits to doing this process? And then I would love some feedback. If something doesn't feel right, if it doesn't look like, if it's not a mess, because remember, this is in usability testing. It's not on our implementation hub. It's still kind of being tested. So if you have any suggestions or thoughts, I would love to hear it. So with that, I think we're going to put them in small groups to have that conversation.
Jonathan,
Perfect.
and if anyone cannot get into a small group because you're driving, et cetera, you just don't feel comfortable, just go ahead and stay in the main room. Don't accept being put into the extra room, and then you'll be around for Rebecca's remarks at the end.
Yep.
And just so everybody's aware, real quick, this aligns with our district capacity assessment elements. Like these elements are pulled directly from that tool, so they align.
Perfect. So I've created. All right. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a great conversation.
Okay. So just real quick, does anybody want to lift up either what you saw as the benefits of having a tool and a resource and a plan like this, or do you have a suggestion for improvements for us just from a quick first glance?
I have a suggestion.
Yes.
You will not be surprised.
Okay.
making some of the comments about rural schools.
Yes.
When I look at this, I think I want to be very clear. I see an absolute necessity for this, for the bigger districts to get themselves organized. However, if it isn't a lot of extra trouble, it might be good to have a simplified version of this for rural schools where their staff is 10 people. That's it.
Correct.
District is one school building and they have 10 people. And it doesn't necessarily need to be that small, but maybe you have a large district version and a small district version.
I
Just
like that. Thank you. That's a really good suggestion. Because our test pilot district was, trying to think, they have about 1,400 students. So they were kind of a smaller suburban type school that we tested it with. So, but definitely not small rural. I know I grew up in small rural, so same teachers all through. So. All right.
Can I
Other
also
suggestions?
Can I
Yeah.
give one more shout out to Mississippi? Casey had a really good idea for coaching
Yes.
this data. Because I was like, what do we use? And Casey said that they have a survey that they
Okay.
give to their to the teachers or whoever, the people being coached on
Mhm.
how effective they thought the coaching was. So it's, kind of subjective, but I loved that idea. I thought that was great. It was a good piece to add in, and I wrote it down on a sticky note.
And it would be fun to collect all the different types of surveys because that's one of the measurements we recommend, Casey. So yay, is making sure that you're measuring your effectiveness with your stakeholders. So very cool. Other points of conversation from your small groups, suggestions. Will you use this tool? We haven't developed the directions even yet, you'll notice, but would you use it?
I see head nodding, just for anyone who's just listening. And by the way, I think it's a great tool. I'm also seeing thumbs up. Thank you, Michelle. But I did want to add too that I asked Rebecca while you all were in breakout groups if she would come back and talk to us about measuring coaching impact, different ways to show a coaching impact. And she said yes. So I do feel like it's like hard to look at that template and not have talked about that a little bit because it's such a big part of what folks need. But we're gonna do it. Rebecca is gonna be very gracious and giving up her time and come back to us.
And I do just want to highlight the district video. I put the link directly in the chat for you because you'll see how they took this template and changed it for what they needed. A lot of times when people get templates, they feel like they have to fill everything out exactly the same. They took this template and they ran with it and they contextualized it based on their need because they have 1,400. No, they're a little bit bigger now. They're probably closer to 1,900 students and they only have 2 instructional coaches. Right. So they were able to use this template for them as well. We're working with 3 districts in New York, actually right now, 3 big districts in New York on using this template to design their coaching system. So as soon as I get those samples, I'll be happy to share. And then definitely we'll be simplifying it for our itty bitties. Definitely needed. So I appreciated that suggestion. Any questions about coaching systems, delivery plans, the template, anything you want to ask or lift up? I also put in the chat a link to our coaching practice profiles. Somebody had mentioned practice profiles earlier. We do have one on coaching. We're actually getting ready to redo it. And so we'll be doing some usability testing cycles on that as well. If anybody would like to join us in that conversation, that would be amazing. But our new co-director at NERN, Mel LeVay, is working on her focus is technical assistance, coaching, and training. And so we're taking a deep dive into all of our materials and updating them with the recent research. So, okay. I'm not very good at teacher wait time.
I think one thing to point out about the coaching practice profile, if for folks who aren't haven't seen it before, is that it takes all the research, not all the research, but important research about coaching and puts it in one place. And so it's nice sometimes when you need to go back to, either make provide a rationale for why we know coaching is important or why this aspect of coaching is important. It's in one place for you, and it sounds like we'll have some updated research soon too.
Yep. Okay, I think I'm all set. I do have a survey if you guys would enlighten me. We like to collect our feedback from every session that we do. So I'm going to go ahead. Give me one sec. Grab my link and pop it in. There's also a question on there for Jennifer and John in regards to additional topics you may be interested in hearing about coaching. I know that they take your feedback into consideration as well. Oh, did I put the wrong link in there? Or did it go through? Didn't go through. Let me try it one more time. There we go. Hopefully it works. Google changed some things on me like really recently.
Looks like it works for me, Rebecca.
Perfect. All right. So that's all I have. Thank you for having me today. And like I said, just take a few minutes to fill out our survey, and John and Jennifer, I will get you the responses as soon as it's completed. Did you want to send it out to the full listserv since a few people had to hop at the hour?
Great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'll do, Rebecca.
Yeah.
It'll take a little while to process the recording, but tomorrow morning I will get the recording up on the website, put together a follow-up email to everyone. It'll include the resources and your slides, the
Okay.
recording, as well as the link to this survey.
Okay. Sounds good.
And just a note on the coaching series, our next presenters are a coaching model demonstration project, and model demonstration projects are funded out of OSEP, Office of Special Education Programs. And they're basically external validation, right? Like so you have something that has an evidence base. Now let's go use it in these settings and learn from the implementation. In this instance, the Rutgers coaching has been integrated into New Jersey's SPDIG and other aspects of how they're supporting multi-tiered systems of support. So they're going to be talking about their coaching model. Their coaching model, they do have research evidence of its impact on child outcomes, on student outcomes. So one of those questions was, hey, how do we make the case that coaching is really important if we want to improve children's academics, children's behavior, et cetera, et cetera? They actually have data related to literacy. I think they might have some behavior data as well. So they have just a long line of research proving different things. And now it's actually been integrated into a SPDIG. So I am looking forward to hearing from them. And as I said, the next Fidelity Friday is going to be Jennifer Pierce, who joined us today. Good to have her on. And she'll be talking about the integrated MTSS fidelity measure, and talking about the different aspects of that, how they decide on those aspects, what they've learned from using it with different sites. And I think it's going to be great. As always, it will be recorded if you can't be there, so you'll be able to access it another way. Rebecca, thank you so much. You got everyone thinking about their coaching model or what they're trying to build as their coaching model. who they're working with, what they need to do. Kristen, thank you so much for sharing what Colorado is up to and being very open about the things that are going well and the things you still want to work on. Stacy and Tina, thank you for sharing about New York, and thank you for everyone who gave feedback, thoughts, and engaged in conversation. And John, as always, thank you for organizing us and making it all work seamlessly. All right. Everyone enjoy your video.